Good evening. Welcome to the Pearl Report. I'm Diana Lin. The United Nations estimates nearly 12 million people in Asia are forced into sex slavery or bonded labor with no control over their lives. In Hong Kong, the government has just begun to recognize what NGOs have been saying all along, that human trafficking both into and out of Hong Kong is thriving. Producer Sylvia Yu finds more needs to be done to help the enslaved.
Andrea is walking the streets of Wan Chai. Every night, often throughout the night, she is forced to find clients who buy sex.
Only night, no morning.
Andrea is from Africa.
I know some men, even ladies, they bring girls.
They were
Yes.
like sex slaves,
Yeah.
right?
There were many. It's like somebody doing business. They pay for them tickets.
Andrea says in January she was flown on a tourist visa to Shenzhen, China, where African traffickers forced her to have sex with several men every day for the first 3 months.
From countries like Uganda, Tanzania, you have individuals that are tricked and deceived into going to this part of the world. Sometimes they enter through China, they go from there to Hong Kong, from Hong Kong to Bangkok, Bangkok to Malaysia, so they move them before the visa basically expires.
Yes, I was a slave. You take your passport until you finish the payment. To do whatever you do, to get that money.
$4,000 the traffickers say Andrea owes them for her plane ticket to China. Then she was brought to Hong Kong to sell her body.
They get trapped in some kind of a debt where they're actually forced to work for somebody else. They lose control of their life. We're talking about human slavery.
It was very hard. You have to do it.
Did any man hit you?
This prostitution is like a dangerous thing.
There are all types of threats that can be used. The debt may be $2,000, but it may take 2 years to pay it off. And the amount that she earns as a result of selling herself could be $20,000.
Men will just first go with you. She reached there are like 7 or 8 men. All of them, they first making love to her. And then after, they just take her out.
Andrea, I met a couple of months ago. She had a huge debt to pay.
Maria says in the last 4 years as an outreach worker, she's met at least 100 trafficked victims like Andrea, brought to Hong Kong on a tourist visa or smuggled in.
I've met from the Philippines, from Thailand, from many different African nations, India, Nepal, Colombia.
Maria says this is a Filipina with a college degree who claims she was deceived into sex work at a Wan Chai bar. She says she offers counseling and a listening ear to these prostitutes enslaved by debt.
They feel if they don't pay this money back, then there's a real chance of physical harm. So many of these women are often scared and hopeless.
Within 2 hours one night, an NGO worker and I met 5 Africans and several women from mainland China who said they were trafficked here and forced into prostitution. Most were afraid to speak on camera, but told us they wanted help.
Maria says she'll raise funds to open a safe home for them.
Often the women might end up in jail. They feel no safety with the police.
The victims in Hong Kong, what they need most is shelter, protection. Protect them from the trafficker.
Gloria says her organization assists foreign trafficking victims with air tickets, shelter, and counseling.
The Hong Kong government, they don't really have a system in assisting the victims. This is not really a big issue in Hong Kong.
Trafficking person in Hong Kong, the problem really relates to prostitutes.
Just a denial that there is an issue and lack of understanding as it relates to sex trafficking, a lack of understanding that they're victimized.
Terry's organization produced the film Nefarious, depicting global sex trafficking. He says trafficking exists wherever there's prostitution.
Everyone knows that prostitution goes on, but the association of it with trafficking is still less than certain.
Tony's group, Stop Trafficking of People, is spearheading research in Hong Kong's red light districts, which he says hasn't been done thoroughly before.
Victims of trafficking are usually treated as immigration suspects, and so quite often get transported out of the country as quickly as possible.
Prostitution alone is not an offense unless the prostitute commits another offense, such as breaching the condition of stay in Hong Kong. There has been human trafficking trainings to our frontline officers, in particular those handling vice activities. There has been action cards and checklists to promote their awareness.
The U.S. State Department's 2013 Trafficking in Persons, or the TIP report, called Hong Kong a
destination and transit territory for men, women, and teenage girls from mainland China, Colombia, the Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, Nepal, Cambodia, and elsewhere in Southeast Asia, subjected to sex trafficking and forced labor.
The report criticized Hong Kong for lacking a comprehensive law in line with the internationally recognized UN Palermo Protocol on human trafficking.
Laws are important to protect the victims who have been trafficked into illegal activities from going to jail as a result of that trafficking experience.
Hong Kong Security Bureau's response to the TIP report:
Hong Kong is neither a destination for human trafficking nor a place of transit for such illicit activities, contrary to the report findings.
We are being criticized of not having a comprehensive TIP law, but in fact, the existing ordinance in Hong Kong covered all the criminal activities relating to human trafficking. We know that trafficking may exist in Hong Kong. It's not a serious problem.
The Hong Kong Department of Justice disagrees.
The problem is growing. Hong Kong felt that it was addressing the issue, but now we're actually describing it in the appropriate terms, that we have human trafficking.
This September, Kevin Zervas changed the policy on prosecution to include the Palermo Protocol's definition on human trafficking.
It includes activities such as sexual exploitation, enforced labour, domestic servitude, debt bondage. Human exploitation should be handled by prosecutors with an appropriate level of understanding, skill and sensitivity.
Zervas has established a task force of lawyers and experts to research and work on legal policies to eliminate all forms of human slavery.
The new statement policy may enhance our officers' awareness in identifying possible victims of human trafficking cases, so more victims could be identified.
I've met well over a dozen men who have been brought here for the purpose of selling their bodies.
These men are from Hong Kong, Nepal, the Philippines, and mainland China. Hong Kong girls have been trafficked too.
We know of people who are going to New Zealand, into Australia and Europe, who have been trafficked into the sex industry, women and girls from Hong Kong.
There have been cases in the past that Hong Kong women has been arranged to work as prostitutes in overseas countries such as Japan or Canada.
In 2012, Hong Kong police cracked down on 4 trafficking syndicates and arrested 10 people for trafficking-related offenses.
That include criminals of local residents and also overseas.
Suzanne, from Africa, is a single mother of 2 boys.
This made that there is a job in China. You are going to work in the hotel, get better salary.
She was flown here, leaving her sons behind with their grandmother.
There was no job, it was prostitution.
Suzanne was a slave, was a sex slave.
The visa was expired. I was trapped. I had no other place, no money. Even my family is poor. Something like $4,000 US.
For her plane ticket, her passport was taken. She estimates she's made at least $40,000 US for her trafficker pimps in 4 months.
The actual profits have nothing to do with the debt, because the debt gets compounded by people who don't care about putting anything down on paper.
It seems clear that the triads are very much involved in prostitution and trafficking here in Hong Kong.
Triads involvement is usually seen in arranging illegal immigrants coming into Hong Kong as prostitutes.
We've got a number of cases where the hallmarks of trafficking appear. On average year, there are about 4,000 women getting arrested in relation to vice activities, and they're seriously exploited.
I met before 5 or 6 girls that are underage, under 16 years old maybe.
It's illegal to have intercourse with a girl under 16 in Hong Kong. Linda, a social worker, says these trafficked mainlanders are forced to work in one-girl, single-room brothels.
This kind of young ladies keep come and go every day. Human trafficked victims are within the sex industry, and they are even more hidden than the prostitutes. So I think we need to search carefully in order to find them. The government better put more resources on the issue of the anti-human trafficking.
Are many of our domestic helpers in debt bondage?
Thousands. Every new person coming from Indonesia, and now even in the Philippines.
Local companies are being mobilized to fight human slavery.
Companies can free literally hundreds, if not thousands, of migrants that are in terrible circumstances.
More on that when we come back.